In this lesson, we're going over rhythm and a note duration on page 12. We're going to write the beats below the notes, but we have a couple of things that we need to talk about first. So we've already learned about quarter notes receiving one beat when we're in common time or 4/4 time. We've learned about a half note receiving 2 beats. And we've learned about an eighth note receiving half of 1 beat. We've also learned that eighth notes can appear different ways. We can have 2 eighth notes with a beam connecting them, or we can have a single eighth note. What we're adding into this lesson is the dot. So you see this little dot next to the note. So note value dots fall to the side of the note, to the right-hand side of the note, not on top of the note. Dots on top of the note are articulation, or how long or short you want to play something as far as like staccato or legato. Not really necessarily depending on the counting, but it can affect the way it sounds. So, dotted notes. So a dot, when we have this, come out to the margin here. A dot, when you put it on the side of the note, that's going to add half of the value of the note you place it on. Okay, for example, let's take the half note. Normally a half note is worth 2 beats or 2 quarter notes, right? So here's a half note. I can break it down into 2 quarter notes. So if I put a dot on it, that dot will add half the value of the note you place it on. So half of a half note is a quarter note. So in fact, a dotted quarter note is now 3 beats long. 1, 2 from the half note, plus 1 more from the dot. We've added the dot, which means we add half of the value of this note, which is a quarter note. That makes sense to you. Okay, and they talk about that right here. Okay, a dotted half note is the original half note, and then the dot, which is another quarter note, because a half note, cut it in half, is a quarter note. All right, and then the other thing we have to look out for in here is the dotted half note. Okay, so let's break it down. We'll break it down up here. So here's your quarter note. Remember that the quarter note gets 1 beat. Half of a quarter note, half of 1 is 1/2, so that'll be your single eighth note. Okay, so that's 1/2. There's the second half. If we add a dot, we need to add half of the value of this note. So a dot added to the quarter note is going to add another eighth note. So we're counting 1 and 2. All right, so let's see how they explain that down here. They're showing that the dotted quarter note is equal to the quarter note, right? Plus half of a quarter note, which is an eighth note. And then they have this little doohickey here, this marking. It's called a tie. Almost said slur. It's called a tie, meaning that these are connected. And that we're going to play this full value, the 1.5 beats, without stopping the bow, without stopping our clapping. Okay? All right, so let's go measure by measure. I'll zoom in some so you can see. All right, so for the first measure, remember we're in common time, 4/4 time, so we need 4 beats, 4 quarter notes in every measure. A half note receives 2 beats, so I'm gonna count 1, 2. Remember, this is long. We're gonna hold it for that whole duration. Now we're on to beat 3. Here's an eighth note, and 4, and. Okay, moving right along. Next measure. Okay, we have a doodad here. Okay, so an explanation follows below. We're going to follow the dotted lines. Okay, so we have this dotted quarter note. Same here, same condition, same here. Okay, everything's the same. They're showing that we have the single eighth note followed by another eighth note and a quarter note to make up this dotted quarter note. You see that? Remember, a dotted quarter note is worth a quarter note tied to an eighth note. All right. So let's look at the second measure on how to count that. quarter note. So once we get to the bar line, we started counting over. So we've gotten to 4. Now we go 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. You see that? That'll be your 3/8 notes that are contained in here. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. Okay. Next measure, half note 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now you have the dotted half note. Remember, the half note is 2 beats long. The dot adds half of the value of this note. So half of 1 half note is a quarter note. So we're going to add another quarter note to it, which gets its own beat. So we're going to count 3. Then we have a quarter rest. So a quarter rest is also like a quarter note in that they both are accounted for 1 beat. Okay, so this is 1, 2, 3, holding out through 1, 2, 3, and then beat 4 here. Next measure, again, you have your half note. We know this is 2 beats. Remember, it's connected, they're long. After we've gotten through number 2, the next number for the metronome click is 3. And, because it's an 8th note, 4, and, right? 2 8th notes occupy the space or time of a 1 beat. So because we have 2 different sounds, we need to fill that in with an and, but not necessarily give it a new beat, because a new beat is a new number. That's a new quarter note. Okay, so again, we have 1, 2. Let me put in the and to make this a little more clear. 1 and, if you have an 8th note here, a placeholder 8th note. 2 and. Okay, so since a quarter note is made of 2 8th notes, we get the 2. The and is the placeholder. It's kind of like the half note where you hold it out, but for 1 beat instead of 2. That makes this beat 3. And then the and is here. The other half of beat 3 is actually in this note. And 4, and. That makes your 3 8th notes that you can find here. 2 8th notes for the quarter note, and then 1 8th note for the dot. Okay. All right, so we have written in the counting here for this exercise. You can clap it if you want to. It does not say to clap it in the directions, so I'll leave you to do that if you'd like to do that on your own. And thanks for watching.